Hey everyone and welcome to Storytime. My name is Jake and today we are going to be looking at the subreddit r/maliciouscompliance. So sit back, relax and enjoy some satisfying stories. My mum's youngest brother demands I call him uncle. My mum's youngest brother was born 15 years before me, and as such always had this weird thing that I show almost reverence to the fact that he is my elder. He doesn't do this to my brother or my cousins, just me. When I hit 16, I went to a technical college in the UK to do my A-levels, and my uncle went back to learn to be an electrician. We would pass now and then when our classes had breaks, and normally just nod in acknowledgement. One day after class, I went into the town centre about 200 meters down the road and ran into my Uncle William shopping. I said hi Will to get his attention, and we had our usual chat about DJing as the only real thing we share in common, then say our goodbyes and left. In the 20 minutes it took to get home, my dear Uncle William had called my mother and ranted about how I called him Will over and over, and how I should call him Uncle William. I will point out, neither my brother or I have called any of my aunts or uncles Aunt X or Uncle Y since we were about 8 or 9 years old, and none of them complained. Mum told him to not make a big deal out of it, but would speak to me about it. Later we had a laugh, but for the sake of keeping peace, just say it to shut him up from whining. Shame my dear uncle didn't think this one through. He didn't like his classmates to know how old he was, and the fact that I teased him that he was in a class of people I went to school with drove him mad, and to complain to mum that I should have never mentioned his age or the fact he didn't have any GCSEs, etc. Being the caring and loving nephew, I did of course shout, "Hey Uncle William," any and every chance I got when I saw him at college. After the third time, he called mum, who just repeated that he should show respect and to lie in his bed. I admit I probably went out of the way to ensure that on breaks from class, we would go to where his class was having a coffee to go and chat and say hello to my Uncle William, and if he could give grandma a message when he got home, etc. I think it lasted no more than 3 weeks before my uncle had gone from calling mum to demand I always call him Uncle William to only when away from classmates. Then, not at college, swiftly. Then, not at college, swiftly adding, not in town either. Each demand met with my mother replying it's either all the time or none of the time. You can't pick and choose. I love my mum. To eventually asking me to just calling him Will. This was because I spent a day calling him Uncle Big Willie for the attention and playing Will Smith at him because I was 16 and a douche. I bet Uncle William doesn't care about that anymore, does he? He just wants to be called Will. 3 acts of malicious compliance in one project, rewarded with 4 days of leave fully paid. I used to work for a mining company as a geologist. I left and a few years later was employed by them again, but in a very different role, dealing mostly with compliance-based stuff. We had a new project coming up, which meant a lot of data would be coming in daily, and at some point we would be required to process all that data. The data was being logged into an Excel spreadsheet, which was probably the quickest and easiest way to do it for the data we needed to capture. It did, however, introduce a larger margin of human error. The benefit was that errors could be checked later in the corporate office rather than taking up time in the field when people were already working 12-hour shifts, and we were paying contractors by the hour. In addition to this, they updated my contract to a fieldwork-based employee rather than office-based. This allowed them to send me out into a field for several weeks at a time without any change in pay. It also had a few other conditions which come into play later. I had created a spreadsheet during my time there as a geologist that removed a few of the basic errors without any issue. Knowing the current project, I offered to spend some time fixing it up because I believed I could get it to eliminate all errors with a few very rare exceptions. My department manager approved, but the general manager felt my time was better spent on my actual assigned work. My assigned task was creating 1 to 1,000 scale maps for a 350-kilometer rail network. Fair enough. I did, however, mention that come reporting and analysis time, we would need a way to get that data into a database and into our software. I mentioned I had created something similar in the past, and I felt I could have something up and running within a week if they let me. Nope. Focus on the work you have been assigned. Okay then. Now, my computer skills were far and above that of the other staff members, with few exceptions. Even on the industry software, I was the go-to guy for people who have been in the industry for several years. Knowing this, I knew there would be a time when my help was required. I started making some of the maps and figured it was going to take several weeks of my time doing it this way. I did some Googling, had a few ideas, and within about 2 hours I had a script ready to run that would automate the process for me. Given that I had just shaved several weeks of grinding off my workload, I figured I would take a look at the spreadsheet after all. Here is where my first act of malicious compliance happens. The general manager comes in and sees me working on the spreadsheet, tells me that he told me not to work on that and to do my other work. I explained that I thought I had found a quicker way of doing it, so had some extra time. Nope, do the maps. I loaded up my script, hit run, checked it was all going smooth, and left the office 3 hours early, knowing my machine would be unusable for the next 5 to 8 hours. I came in the next day and there are hundreds of PDFs on my computer, all of the maps. I told my boss and the general manager I had finished the maps and the PDFs were available. I asked to take a look at the data and get something ready. Nope, we need the PDFs in a single file. I explained that it would be a huge file and almost unusable. Just do it. Malicious Compliance Part 2. I set the PDFs combining just after lunch and went home early again. I can't remember the exact size, but the PDF was enormous. We were working from 5 to 6-year-old laptops that just couldn't cut it. He complained that it wouldn't open, and I explained the issue with the size. He just mumbled and sent me on our way. It got dangerously close to the time when our reports were due to the share market. Because we had no way of putting the data into the database ourselves, we had outsourced that, and we were paying someone a very handsome sum to deal with it. Unfortunately, the data we were sending them was full of errors, and constantly had to be rechecked and validated. Eventually, we got the data in the database, and we just needed to generate our statistics and reports, which were due in 3 weeks. Turns out, the only guy in the office who was capable of doing that was me. I was told exactly what was needed and how it was to be presented. I explained that it would probably take at least a week, but more likely 1.5 weeks. They said that is okay, it is priority number 1. I got it all done in 1 week. Everyone signed off on it. The senior geologist, who had 15 years of experience, the manager, who had 35 years experience, and the general manager, who probably only had 12 years of experience. Everything was good to go for reporting in 2 weeks' time. The general manager approaches me 30 minutes before I am due to leave on Thursday. We are due to submit our reports at 7 AM on Friday. He said, "I have just been taking another look at these reports, and I think we need to make some changes. We need to report X, Y, and Z for sake of transparency." I explained to him that A, no we don't, because X, Y, and Z aren't about transparency, and they have no relevance to what we are reporting. B, no one else in the industry would ever report X, Y, and Z because it is not relevant and only raises issues. And C, it took a week to make those reports. He insists. I call in my department manager, who backs me up. The general manager says, "Regardless of what others are doing, we need to be sure we are doing the best job we can and to be proud of what we are putting out as a company. I think doing this shows how committed we are." My boss sighs and calls me into his office alone. He said to do the work and stay late, take an extra day off for the few hours it's going to take. I explained that I had a dinner reservation and that I would come back after I had finished dinner, but I couldn't guarantee it was going to get done in any reasonable amount of time. The general manager came in and thanked me for my commitment and to email him every couple of hours with any progress updates or questions, no matter what time of day or night. Malicious Compliance Part 3. I started working on it, spent a few hours on it before heading out to dinner for an hour and a half, then back to the office. It got to about 11:30 PM, and I had barely 1/3 of what was required. I had been emailing my progress throughout. I couldn't take it anymore. I set up some automation scripts which I knew would get a little bit more of it done, but not the whole thing. I then set up some timed emails to be sent off to the general manager, including one at 3:30 AM the following morning, letting him know where the data would be. Friday morning, I get into the office, load up the report that came out, and none of my work is included. Apparently, he had tried to get the executives to include it, but they told him the same things I told him. He saw me and decided to thank me for the late night I pulled. I made a bit of a sarcastic remark about how it wasn't even included, and he sheepishly ignored it. Said he would give me a paid day off for my efforts. That's number one. I told my boss, and he said he would give me an extra day off as well. That's number two. I reminded the general manager that they had changed my contract and therefore I was already owed a day off because my shift lasted longer than 14 hours. That's number three. Not only that, but because I had not had a full 8 hours break between my shifts, I was owed yet another day off. That's number four. This was not the first or last time I maliciously complied to the general manager's wishes. It was the first real major one that paid off. Wow, 3 in 1 though. I mean, the only thing he needs to make sure he doesn't do is tell the department that his job can be done by robots, because he's gonna lose his job real quick. Sure, I'll take free money. A new gas station / convenience store opened up in my area, and I went to do some shopping. Now, this isn't your normal gas station. It has a restaurant, fishing, and hunting section to go along with the gas station. It had just recently opened and was really busy. I spent $75 and some change, and paid with a $100 bill. On the way out, I realized that I got $10 too much change back. I went back in to return the extra money to the cashier, and as I walked up, he said, "The line ends back there," in a very smart tone. I wait in the long line. When I finally get back to the cashier, I tell him he gave me the wrong change. He immediately blurts out that he gave me the correct change and starts to make a scene. He cuts me off every time I try to interject. Finally, he tells me to leave and keep my change the way it is, because it's most definitely correct. At this point, I'm tired of messing with him and decide to maliciously comply. I give up and say fine. He finally quit talking long enough for me to tell him his drawer is going to be $10 short because he gave me too much money. His expression is priceless as I go out the door. I live in a small town and know the owner of the business, so I call him the next day and told him what happened. He told me that the register had come up over $100 short, and he was none too happy. He was glad that I called because the cashier was trying to cover up his screw-ups, and he even gave me a $20 gift card. $100 short in one day, what? Like, that's insane, that's absurd. I would fire that guy straight away, because he's probably either taking the money or he literally can't do basic maths. Your son's a special snowflake? You got it, ma'am. I work at an elementary school with a child who requires a one-on-one assistant. That's me. The kid has a few things going on, both a physical and mental disability, as well as a general miasma of social anxieties. All in all, a pretty good kid, but has some extra difficulties at school. His mum, on the other hand, is kind of a piece of work. She has reamed out the school and the special education department because we try to hold him to reasonable standards, such as doing homework, learning independence, and interacting with peers. Now, anyone in special education will tell you that no, kids that require extra help are not always going to be on a grade level with their peers. But if you help support them and expect reasonable outcomes, they generally rise to meet those. She apparently thinks that we're a glorified daycare and he shouldn't be required to do any work at all. The kid picks up on this and knows how to read a room. Anytime his mum walks in, which she does often and unannounced, his entire demeanor changes. He throws tantrums, he complains that the activities he's been doing and succeeding in are too difficult. It's a real treat. So recently, the kid has been doing things to get out of work. He'll lie about what work he has, he'll complain about it, he'll forget or run out of time at home. We brought this up with his mum, and as should have been expected, we were shut down. My son doesn't lie. My son can't lie. He doesn't know how. Me and everyone in that special education department, are you kidding me, lady? So today, the kid was doing an independence exercise, where he's given instructions to go to one of his specials, music, PE, art, etc., without adult supervision, and his goal is to get there without stopping and getting distracted. I had to have a quick meeting with his homeroom teacher, so he had about 10 minutes to get 30 feet. When I catch up with him, he's about halfway there. Hey man, what's up? OP, you're not mad at me, are you? Nah, just curious. Why aren't you where you need to be? The kid, trying to avoid being in trouble. My leg hurts. He grabs it and does a quick intake of breath. I had to stop. Uh-huh. Now, I know he's lying. I also know that he has work that he has to make up because he ran out of time to do the night before. I also know that directly after music is PE, his favorite special. Me, super serious and definitely believing him and worried. Oh man, that's really unfortunate. Well, I don't want you to get hurt, so here's what we can do. Let's sit down right here and we can work on your homework that's due today. The kid, realizing the hole he just dug, no, OP, it's okay. No, me interrupting and laying it on thick. No, buddy, I know you're telling me the truth because we just had this discussion that words matter. I really don't want you to get hurt, so if you tell me your leg is hurting, we can just skip PE today and work on your worksheet here. The kid, realizing what he's done, oh no. It's okay, bud. I'm not angry or upset. I'm just worried. If you tell me your leg hurts, I have to look out for you. We wouldn't want you to hurt yourself, especially in PE. So it looks like we've got about an hour to work on this worksheet. So, problem number 1. I'm really glad they've got the one-on-one sessions because that person's like really helping out and that mum kind of sucks for doing that. Hey everyone, I hope you all had a really good day and that you enjoyed that video. If you want to check out some other videos, then click on screen right now or check out the playlist down below. If you enjoyed that video, then please do leave a like. And if you want to submit your own stories, then you can do so by joining the Discord in the top link in the description. But thank you so much for watching and I will see you very soon.